Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for being here with us. My name is Ivan Salinas. I'm the programs manager here at Beyond Broke Literary Arts Center. I want to welcome you to the Wanda Coleman Theater, specifically for the book launch of Convergence, Poetry on Environmental Impacts of War. We have four of the contributors, as well as the editor, Teresa May Chook, and the audience, but also will be featuring. So give them a round of applause for coming out with this beautiful book. Yeah. Want to start first with a land acknowledgement. Beyond Baroque is a place dedicated to the possibilities of language, but we acknowledge our presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Tongva peoples. We acknowledge the wrong done to these peoples through settler colonialism and genocidal practices. As a literary arts organization, we are committed to uplifting indigenous communities, their stories, and cultures. This place itself, for those of you who are new to Beyond Baroque, was first the original Venice City Hall. This was the original building for that. It was built in 1903. And in the 1970s, Beyond Baroque poets and artists with George Drury Smith kind of took over this space. So since then, it has been a home for art and artistic expression. This was the old City Hall next to us. Now it's a Chicanx Museum, but and it's called Spark, led by Judy Baca, but that was the old jail cell. So there's a lot of history just within this small complex. And I definitely encourage you to visit all three spaces that are in this block. But if you want to know more about Beyond Baroque, we have our workshops currently online. We have our fiction workshop, which happens every Monday on Zoom. It's currently facilitated by Raquel Baker. And our historic poetry workshop happens every Wednesday night, and is currently led by Martin Yago. Both of those happen over Zoom, and they're completely free. So if you have a piece on draft, fiction or poetry, you're welcome to bring those with the group and have them workshopped. And for the performance and reading series that we have here every weekend, we'll be now heading into June, and we are hosting a blues night with Tom and Robert. We like to call it Back Porch Blues. It's kind of sold out already. We'll see if there are any more tickets available this coming days, but as of now, it is a sold out event. But we are also hosting book launches for Michelle Jacobs. On Juneteenth, we are hosting Audrey Shipp, whose new book, Poetry in Afro-Diaspora, will be releasing. And we're also planning a tribute for Spanish poet Federico Garcia Lorca on June 20th in celebration of what would be his 90th birthday. And if you want to support Beyond Baroque further from the events that I've mentioned, if you want to become a member, you can do so by inquiring about it in the bookstore, but memberships start at $75 with discount prices available to students. And for an entire year, you are invited to all of our events for free, and you also get discounts in the bookstore for original merch that we have as Beyond Baroque, and also discounts on books. A big thank you to the Beyond Baroque team. That's Eric Alberg in the booth, leading the live stream as well as the sound for today, Genesis Perez in the bookstore, and our entire team. That's Rhiannon, Barbara, Annika, and Jody that make Beyond Baroque possible. I also really want to thank our organizer, co-editor, Teresa May Chook, for bringing this ensemble of poets for this evening. I think this is a very heavy topic, and I'm really glad that we are exploring this through poetry. I got a copy myself last month at the Festival of Books, the LA Times Festival of Books, and have been reading many of the passages, many of the poets who we'll be reading today. And you just see, there is no reason for something like war to exist, but you really get to see details of how each poet is exploring a different facet of time periods that have emerged through conflict, and how we can heal from that, repair all of the conflicts that we have. But I think our politics, our leaders, so-called leaders, are making that very difficult. But it's going to be really interesting to hear from you all, and the poems that you will be reading. And some of them may not be the poems from the contributors themselves. We are missing a few people, but we'll be making sure that they are present with us one way or another. So I think to talk more about the book and start the evening with some poetry, I'm going to welcome our editor, Teresa May Chuk, who was born in Saigon, Vietnam, and fled her Vietnamese homeland in a boat with her mother and brother shortly after the American War. Her father, who fought in the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, was imprisoned in a Viet Cong re-education camp for 9 years. Teresa grew up on unceded Tongva territory in Pasadena and Altadena. A former Altadena poet laureate, Teresa is the author of 3 poetry books, including Invisible Light, Keeper of the Winds, and Red Thread. Her poetry chapbook, Incidental Takes, was published by Hummingbird Press in 2023. Teresa is also the co-editor of the anthology Convergence, Poetry of Environmental Impacts of War, and she has a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from Goddard College and is a public high school English teacher in Los Angeles in her 21st year of teaching. Please give a round of applause to Teresa May Chuk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Thank you, Beyond Baroque. And thank you, everyone, for coming here on a Friday night to celebrate the book launch of Convergence. I'm very honored to be co-editor of this anthology. It's taken us 3 years to bring it to the world. And I'm just going to read a brief description. Convergence, Poetry on Environmental Impacts of War, published by Scarlett Tanager Books, offers a groundbreaking and vital perspective on war's destruction of the natural world, the creatures, plants, soil, water, and atmosphere of Earth. In poems and contextual comments, 61 contemporary poets focus on military damages to the ecosystems on 6 continents and the moon. I'm going to start by reading a few poems that are in this anthology that are not mine, and then I'll end with 3 of my poems. I forgot to post it, the 3rd one, but the first poem I'm going to read is by Nguyen Phan Quai Mai. She's a Vietnamese poet, and each poem in this book is accompanied by an author's note. So I'll read that after the poem. The fish. My mother brought home a fish to celebrate her children's good grades, marked in red ink. My 2 brothers and I danced in our front yard, barefoot, our tongues excited to taste the sweetness of our favorite dish after months of eating boiled manioc and water spinach. What's wrong with it? My father pointed at the fish's large head and crooked body, and now all of us could see how my mother could afford this fish. It had gigantic eyes and 2 tails squirming beneath its scales. My father said he'd learned from a friend that the Agent Orange sprayed into our rivers, lakes, and ponds had deformed the many living things, fish, eels, turtles, but our tongues were trembling for the taste of a proper meal. Our stomachs yelled for protein, and my mother, who had spent the money we'd earned laboring in the rice field under the hot sun, decided to cook what could be the war's leftover. I don't know if the seed of Agent Orange managed to plant itself in me through the flesh of the strange-looking fish, but I remember the tenderness of my mother's cooking, spiced with chili and ginger, picked from the garden of her springtime love. Author's note. I grew up in the Mekong Delta, an area sprayed by American airplanes during the Vietnam War, and experienced the impact of Agent Orange. The above poem comes from my personal experiences. I also volunteered at orphanages where I worked with victims of Agent Orange. And I kept wondering why humans could cause such suffering to other humans. I documented the impact of Agent Orange in my novels, The Mountains Sing and Dust Child. That's part of the author's note. The next poem is by Hmong poet Mai Der Vong. Era of Retreat. War closes down on a country where an animal occurred without anyone's need to know it was occurring. No one came and went where the animal lived, near munitions, under cover, where it lived, orphaned by taxonomy, where it lived, beside foliage sprayed with chemicals, where it lived, rugged and remote in a refuge of shaded stream beds, mineral licks and highlands, along steep edges and higher reaches of rocky springs. No outsiders, nothing of the nameless alive in these woods, nothing of this animal inside hollows, small caves curving to its shape with horns perfected, in a scene of the world before ice. No one to study a wilderness kept in quiet. How much scenery can we catalog before we make it endangered? How does war kill an animal even as war leaves the animal alone? To flee, to hide, to shelter, to roam, to gather, to breed, forcing the animal farther, terra incognita, farther, where bombs flower into a feral thrive, farther into untouched hiding, an animal hunkers down. Author's note, the saola is a highly rare and critically endangered animal endemic to the Annamite Mountains between Laos and Vietnam. As a Hmong American poet, I've long thought about saola's connection to the US wars in Southeast Asia, specifically the secret war in Laos, when the CIA and the US government coerced and then used Hmong boys and men to fight and die for the American campaign against communism. Hmong soldiers fought long and grim battles in northern Laos while also rescuing downed American pilots, disrupting traffic on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and gathering intelligence. When the Americans could no longer sustain the war, they withdrew in 1975 and abandoned the Hmong people to their fate. The story of the Hmong people becoming refugees reminds me of saola's tenuous existence in a landscape ravaged by a history of war. While the largest threat to saola has been snaring and poaching as bycatch, the animal has also been impacted by loss of habitat. Conservationists estimate that there are fewer than 100 remaining, although it's possible that saola could already be extinct. The next poem is by Shahé Mankarian, who sadly could not be with us today in person, but he is with us in spirit. The Last Cedar. A mishandled grenade uprooted the only cedar in the village. Militiamen burned its branches to keep their trigger fingers from frostbite. The shepherd sat on the splintered trunk and cried because shrapnel had struck his sleeping sheepdog. The shaman collected scattered leaves because he believed God secretly rested in chlorophylls. No one knew why the village fool wailed for 3 days. We found the prostitute disrobed by the stream. A limb-like spear had pierced her wayward heart. The blind bard rescued a dead sparrow's nest and composted broken eggshells. Layla, the girl I loved in kindergarten, planted a new seed by the sandbags. Author's note. I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. We stared at the green cedar tree on the flag as we sang the national anthem in elementary school. Our church leaders taught us that the cedars of Lebanon were mentioned more than 70 times in the Bible. King David called them the trees of the Lord that he planted. When Lebanon's civil war started in 1975, we wondered if the cedars would survive the bombardment, the festering hatred between two sectarian zealots, and if any of their gods would protect our national trees. That's part of the author's note. Then I'm going to read my poems, but I'm going to... This is a very heavy book, but is also a very hopeful book. I'm going to read my poem, Agent Blue. To kill correctly takes calculation, down to a science. Arsenic, cacodyllic acid, no water and rice on a cellular level. Make sure no surviving seed can be collected and planted, because even a small seed assures survival, because mortars, grenades, and bombs cannot destroy a grain, because our heart is made of seeds. Know what it takes to kill the seeds. Know what it takes to deprive the plant of water, to dehydrate it, to be surrounded by love, but unable to absorb it. My author's note. During the Vietnam War, known in Vietnam as the American War, Agent Blue was sprayed on 250,000 acres of mangrove forests and about 750,000 acres of rice paddies in South Vietnam, destroying crops and contaminating soils and water sediments with arsenic. In an attempt to win the war, the U.S. military sought to destroy the Vietnamese people's food supply, rice. Larry Sehacek, a U.S. Army veteran who is also a professor of soil science at North Dakota State University, said, quote, Agent Blue was the most effective of all the rainbow herbicides in killing rice and grasses and persisted in the soil after the crops were destroyed, unquote. Due to the military spraying of chemicals such as Agent Blue during the war, high concentrations of arsenic have remained in the Mekong Delta environment for the last 60 years, continuing to contaminate the waters, sediments, and soil. I'm going to read my next poem, The Decade the Rainforest Died. The decade the rainforest died, the deer did not stop running. Leopards climbed into trees that could not hide them. The duglanker and the white-cheeked gibbon cursed at the metal gods we flew, raining on them as they burned from napalm. Elephants choked on the smoke of gunpowder and poison, their steps a strange rhythm as they tried to fly. The thunder of bombs echoed the steps of elephants. Tigers exploded as they stepped onto landmines. In a forest covered with leaves dead from Agent Orange, fallen trees, and decomposing bodies of animals and people, the earthworms were washed away in monsoons with soil that could no longer grab onto roots. The Javan rhinoceros and the wild water buffaloes that were still alive wandered aimlessly, weary. With M16s and AK-47s, we marched quietly and steadily, not knowing why we were killing each other. My author's note. For 10 years, the U.S. Air Force flew nearly 20,000 herbicide spray missions in order to destroy the forest cover as well as agriculture lands in key areas of South Vietnam. I'm going to read my last poem. Hundreds of bombings a day, a ghazal. Gaza, Palestine. The soil is contaminated from bombs, arsenic, mercury, lead, cadmium, chromium. Bomb craters are contaminated with nickel, copper, manganese, chromium. These heavy metals are carcinogenic and cause multiple organ damage. The children play in soil with arsenic, mercury, lead, cadmium, chromium. These heavy metals contaminate olive trees, oranges, rats, fruit bats, sunbirds. The goats and the cheese are contaminated with arsenic, mercury, lead, cadmium, chromium. Organ injury, stress, disease, lower reproductive success, and death. The camels and sheep are sick from poisons, arsenic, mercury, lead, cadmium, chromium. Unexploded landmines kill animals and people, including children. For decades and centuries to come, the land, my heart, my liver is polluted with arsenic, mercury, lead, cadmium, chromium. My author's note. According to Gaza's government media office, an estimated 45,000 bombs were dropped during the first 89 days of conflict that started in October 2023. I'm going to skip a part of it and read the last part. The constant bombing is particularly distressing to me because I lived in Palestine from 1993 to 1994 and from 1996 to 1997. And it is disturbing to see the land subjected to continuous environmental assault. Olive trees, date palm trees, citrus grove, cacti, fig trees, and flowers, such as the red poppy and fakwa iris, once flourishing, are being destroyed. How many camels, goats, sheep, and birds have been stressed and terrified by the explosions and died from the constant dropping of bombs? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Next poet is Lisbeth Koyman. She's a bilingual author from Venezuela, standing unbalanced on a blurred line between poetry and memoir. Her debut book, I Asked the Blue Heron, a memoir, explores the intersection between immigration and mental health. Her poetry collection, Uprising, Alzamiento, raises awareness of the humanitarian crisis in her homeland, and portrays the faces of Venezuela's complex economic and political unrest. Koyman lives, works, and hikes in Southern California. Bienvenida, Lisbeth Koyman.
I'm going to start with my own poem. First, I'm going to read the author's note. The 27-year-old revolution, communist revolution in Venezuela, has thrown the country into much political and social unrest. Although there is not a declared civil war in Venezuela, the communist regime keeps the government by force. Under the regime, a project called Orinoco Mine Arc, both a geographic zone and an official project known as by its acronym in Spanish, AMO, supports illegal mining. Confrontations between the Guardians of the Angel Falls, the PEMON, and armed irregular groups sponsored by the regime have inflicted casualties in the indigenous population since the project's inception in 2016. Most notorious of these armed confrontations is the massacre of February the 22nd, 2019, in which at least 25 PEMON Indians died at the hands of the Venezuelan army on the border with Brazil. Without the PEMON, the jungle can't defend itself. It just displays the devastation caused by irresponsible mining practices, brown craters of mud called bullas, land now deemed infertile after mercury and diesel oil destroy its nutrient. With my poem, Orinoco Mine Arc, I open a window to look into the reality of the most delicate ecosystem in my country, together with the Amazon basin, once considered the lungs of the world. Orinoco Mine Arc. Scarce oil revenues turn addiction of mineral money into the Dorado mist in exotic land. Gold and diamond for pricey vanity, coltan for digital technology, kaolin for medicine, dolomia for agriculture and construction, laying under millennial soil between Venezuela and Brazil. Orinoco Mine Arc. Gold mafias, illegal miners, narcos, guerrilla, army, pranes share the loot with the Venezuelan regime. Anarchy in the beehive, hydraulic mining liquid mercury pumped into deep mineral soil hoses and bombs perforate the ground. Deep bullas open, mercury gold amalgam, heated vapors rise, gold obtained, hose 1,000 tons of hydrogen released into the air. Exhausted ditches abandoned, erosion, deforestation, pool of mud, human excrement, mercury and diesel oil remain. Slash drains into rivers, Caroni, Cuyuri, Ventuari, Caura, and the mighty Orinoco food chain forever altered, ecosystem fragmented, delicate biodiversity violated, dictator fossilized in power, species forever gone. Thank you. From the southern East Venezuela rainforest, we're going to move on to the exercise northern edge of the U.S. military joint military training in the Gulf of Alaska. It is a whale or an enemy submarine. In the World War I and World War II, the prevailing rule of war was, when in doubt, bomb. The exercise Northern Edge is a military U.S. joint is a U.S. joint military training conducted in the Gulf of Alaska, most recently in May 2023. Large numbers of fish and marine mammals' death from some activity are considered incidental takes, and the number of incidental takes allowed over a 5-year game period is shocking, 12 million. My poem explores the notion of doubt and certainty in the taking of marine life. By Vivian Faith Prescott, when in doubt, bomb. Those who are counted dead are warm-blooded and breathe air, human, not what that breaks the surface of sea exhaling. A steamy spout 30 feet high with a slick back like a target, speaking chirps and squeaks beside a milk-full calf. Not a U-boat, not an enemy hissing in the deep, not another one, but a throat with a U-fold, expandable sack, a chest. Vibrations, sound and song traveling his notes thousands of miles. Consider basking sharks, sperm whale, fin, minke, and humpbacks. Don't let the enemy submarines get away. Is he a swirl of sea or sup take? Is there an oil slick or not? Only air to surface merriment and a comic medal awarded in the Royal Order of the Whale Bangers. We never counted their war dead, but since then, we've rocketed their whale songs into outer space, added them with a harpoon pen to an endangered list. We've untangled whales from fishing gear, pour water across stranded bodies, haul them out into the deep again. Evidently, since then, we've learned everything counts, from decibels to detonations. We schedule our northern edge plate dates, more torpedoes and dogfighting, more missiles, drones, sonobuoys, and increase in sonar testing. We perform our bravado war games, tabulating numbers, incidental takes, while clutching a letter of authorization. The sum of our reckoning meet in the Gulf of Alaska in May, a gathering of mammals on a green sea, our tallies swimming in upward spirals, mouths wide open, seawater flowing through Baleen. Thank you. From the Gulf of Alaska, we traveled to Europe, and in the words of Hazel Clayton Harrison, this poem speaks of the mystical beauty and power of one of the world's largest waterfalls, known as one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. It cascades from the Zambezi River on the border between Zimbabwe and Zambia. Long before the Zimbabwe Liberation War, also known as Rhodesian Bush War, 1976-1980, which was fought between the British Empire and African guerrillas, local villagers considered the waterfall to be a sacred place. They built shrines near the site and named it Mosi Oa Tunia, smoke that thunders. Scottish missionary David Livingstone renaming of the waterfall in 1905 to Victoria Falls in honor of Queen Victoria was an act of oppression and colonization. The construction of a railway near the site led to exploitation of timber forest, ivory, animal skins, and other natural resources, and the railway also made the area accessible to tourists. The lioness in this poem is a symbol for Mosi Oatunia's natural power, pulchritude, and grace. Unfortunately, during the Bush War, villagers were pushed deeper into the forest and hills, forcing local lions to migrate into more densely populated areas, where they were then routinely hunted and killed for sport. Thus, Zimbabwe's lion population declined significantly. Sadly, today's lion living in the southern Africa's wilderness are at risk of extinction. Mosi Oatunia by Hazel Clayton Harrison. When European colonizers first saw her, they were blinded by her beauty and mystical powers. The way feathers and flowers draped her long little legs, the way she danced through the forest, fierce and seductive as a lioness, a rainbow crowning her head. Before they came, she was called Mosi Oatunia, smoke that thunders, a name that evoked her divine spirit. To remake her in their image, colonizers tore off her vines, desecrated her altars, and renamed her after their Queen Victoria. Now that Zimbabwe's liberation has been won, she dances barefoot beneath the baobab, thunders over Batoka Gorge, and swims naked to the sea, singing her name. And I bring you last from the militarized zone between North and South Korea, sorry. The Korean Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, is a 155-mile-long, 2.4-mile-wide strip of land that has been off limits to civilians for 70 years, since the 1953 armistice between North and South Korea. Scientists have recovered over 6,000 species, many endemic and endangered, in this unintentional wildlife sanctuary. The rare Patrinia saniculifolia, a flowering plant endemic to Korea, is found in abundance in the DMZ. Its name means infinite love. Infinite Love in No Man's Land by Mary Beth Hollowing. This is the last poem I will read. Crawl on your knees through this minefield of a world we have created. Crawl through the river, through the sliver of earth we have left them, shore to shore, rocky mountains, forests, wetlands. Then a splinter of broken mirror revealing what this world once was. See how they embrace what we leave. This wasteland we have turned our backs on, turned our rifles toward, with barbed wire, a burial ground trap set to keep our own kind out. crawl where they dodge the most densely mined land on this planet. We were once blessed with before bombs. See how only what we must leave alone, returns, flowers, flourishes. See how they recreate the wall, cranes, red-crowned and white-naped, promenade, greening wetlands, masked deer dance light around buried bombs, passing through wreckage of our own warring. Crawl with such care. Do not crush what thrives. This endemic whose name speaks infinite of the one thing that could save us from sanctioning our estrangement form what this wall gives. See them only in shadow images captured remote, blurred rush of Asiatic bear cub prancing in a clear stream, wildcat at night, eyes bright by camera's flash, faces turned towards us, surprised to find we still exist. Yearn to see them, to know they still exist. Mongolian race runner, mountain goat, golden eagle, river otter pour poison between two warring nations, lacing them together with water dams. Only there, because we are not. We name them. We count them. We are not among them in this what it will become. Peaceful coexistence, thrive in paradise, mirror made whole after we have set our last trap and trapped our last selves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisbeth. Our next poet is Alicia Viguer Espert. Born and raised in Valencia, Spain, she's a 4 times Pushcart nominee, winner of the San Gabriel Valley Poetry Festival with her chapbook, Holding a Hummingbird. 2 chapbooks, Out of the Blue Womb of the Sea and 4 in 1, are published by Four Feather Press. Please welcome Alicia Viguer Espert. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And thank you, Teresa, for putting this wonderful book together. A few weeks ago, a friend of mine gave me a book from Isabel Allende called The Lone Petal of the Sea. The main characters are 2 refugees from the Spanish Civil War that go to Chile. So I was reading it and I was just devastated. I'm crying, it's just heartbroken. And then I realized I read that book years before and I didn't have that experience. I didn't have that reaction. So I was trying to figure out why that happened. And I imagine that in part was because what is happening today with immigrants, with refugees, the world that we are living in. But I figured that as I got older, I dropped some of my protections, I guess, because after all, I'm the first generation after the Spanish Civil War. My father was 20, and he fought against Franco. My mother's side of the family was practically destroyed. My grandfather put his 2 sons in a boat to Argentina. The other part of the family went to Paris. And I knew their stories of my family, but I never made them mine. I didn't recognize the way they affected me. So then I wrote this poem, and then recently I saw a poem on internet about this uncle from Paris, which he wrote about, the Spaniards trying to get to France, crossing the Pyrenees, and the French really didn't want to have a bunch of refugees, thousands of refugees, probably millions, and also about being in a concentration camp, which in France, I didn't know that he was there, maybe he wasn't, but he wrote about it. Anyway, the point is that, the land gets affected, and we are part of the land, and we all carry some kind of trauma, I suppose. Anyway. At the end of the Spanish Civil War, 1939, behind colorless fields, untended gardens, we look back at the long line of loaded carts, mules, dragging the minimal over unrecognizable roads. Attempting to reach the French border, we enter a smoke-filled forest of oaks. Trees, which often die standing, resemble incense sticks consumed by flaming heat. Nobody thinks of God or lights candles inside the church burned almost to the underground shelter. Rabbits expire from toxic fumes. Without green leaves, deer disappear. Military foxholes evict the original tenants, splitting open their habitat like overripe pomegranates. Orchards scorched by bombs and neglect won't produce crops for a very long time. Gasoline turned the river into an oily bluish pond where silver fins float wasted. To comprehend the chaos, I adjust my lenses continuously after crashing into starved animals. I pretend the hum of flying bombers comes from beehives I have not seen in 3 years. And when bombs explode, I tell my children it's the noise from a ball game at the stadium behind the wheat fields. The acoustic background of the city overflows with barking dogs, deafening black blasts, scaring birds, electric saws cutting rebar to fashion stretchers to carry someone to the makeshift hospital or the cemetery overrun by starving canines. At night, one can hear a concert of sobs rising. Smoke fills the collective lungs of frogs, horses, humans, even eagles lie down, wings stretched, beaks buried on sticky mud. Remnants of wildlife cross the Pyrenees. Standing trees, no longer the norm, shiver when the undergrowth trembles. Forests transform into ghosts may grow back or not. The vanquished land stunned by sorrow at the desecration resembles a dying corpse. I adjust my lenses again, gape at what I see through my narrow vision, still not understanding the horror we created. Okay. Thank you. The next one is from Billy and Hayen, and I'm going to read the note first. We don't know for sure how General George Armstrong Custer made his end in 1876, whether he was shot from his horse and died quickly, or fought bravely until inanimate, or whether or not he was scalped. But in any case, Yellow Hair was killed before he could eat every buffalo in the primal waste, and thereby starves out any Indian who hadn't been killed by cavalry or smallpox-infected blankets gifted to them. We can imagine the ensuing misery for the tribes that had followed the herds for their sustenance. Repast. Custer sipped soup made from buffalo fat and berries mixed with buffalo blood and found it good. He ate the soft-nosed gristle mixed with marrow from the leg bone and found it good. He ate the cheese-like intestinal content of newborn calves killed in spring and found it good. He ate a buffalo bull's raw testicle, sweet-scented in cream and bearberry leaves, and found it good. And he thought, given enough time. He could eat a buffalo's entire, every hair and his eyes, hooves, every vein and bone, and then begin again, given enough time. He could eat the whole herd and every other animal and insect and every other living thing in the territory of the Dakotas. Okay. This one is from Mary Beth Holman, and I read the author's note first. The Suke-en ginkgo tree, planted in 1740, is one of 7 ginkgos that survived the Hiroshima bomb. Located less than a mile from ground zero, it continues growing to this day, now within the Suke-en garden. The last surviving species of their taxonomic family, ginkgos, were nearly extinct when humans began planting them around 1,000 years ago, one of the first examples of conservation through cultivation. Suke-en ginkgo speaks a haibon. Sorry, I need to put. When the black rain ends, when the bloodless bodies are buried in earth, when the poisons filter down into the dark and fertile soil, when the troops turn to stone, we will still be here. We who withstood heat 40 times stronger than the suns, who have existed ever since before the dinosaurs, who you call living fossils, oldest the trees, last of our kind, we who batted new green fists within the year of your blast, remain. You who once saved our kind, who value our tenacity to grow in your concrete worlds and clean your sooted air, who still lean against our trunks and dream what you could be, you and we, our link and our survival, we will not forsake you. We draw power from deeper than you bury your war heroes, deeper than your snapro will ever lodge. We stand undeterred by our many wounds, phonics from the ashes of your fears, flame-funding routes to rise around charred trunks and blasted limbs. Lesson. We speak to you of endurance, voices in concert with winds. We remind you that only in coexistence will you survive. We tell you that your suffering arises from your confusion about superiority. Superiority is always with those who branch broader into multiplicity. Lesson. Venerate these charred trunks. See how our golden halo falls within a day to create a mirror halo at our feet, where all power resides. All life waits for you to surrender to our embrace. When the black rain ends, beneath burns, spring's green fists, whole falls, holding halo. Do it again. When the black rains end, beneath burns, spring's green fists, whole falls, golden halo. And I'm going to finish with this from Camille T. Donji, called Sanctuary. I'll start with the notes. Human conflict generally has substantial negative impact on the elephant populations of Africa and Asia. In Africa, civil war, notably in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe, has resulted in a significant loss of elephants who step in anti-personnel and anti-tanks landmines. Those who did not die were often so maimed that they have to be killed. Landmine deaths are injuries are also recorded for Asian elephants. The elephant in Camilla T. Donji's poem, Sanctuary, is a rarity and that it was fitted with a prosthetic at a sanctuary where it would live out his life. One such sanctuary is located in Asia Elephant Hospital in Lampang, Thailand, where orthopedic surgeon Dr. Therb Chai Livakate fitted the first prosthetic leg for an elephant in 2010. Sorry, give me a minute. Sanctuary. The way she holds her huge limb forward, patient and expectant, while the slight man antethers, Jesus, what's going on? The old prosthetic, a cage of metal, polyurethane, and canvas large enough that I could stand inside. Sweet elephant, waiting for the man as the man sets aside the artificial leg, then turns back to the nylon sleeve that caps her knob, rolling it down like a lover or a mother removes underwear from a body they adore. That gentle, that disinterested in causing harm. The dear elephant is steady all this time on her 3 remaining legs, while the man strokes the knob of her mind-blasted one. A pucker, a scar, a forever wound that remind me of a chest of a woman who has refused reconstructive surgery after losing one breast to the scalpel. The scarf, like a nipple, stretches into a grin. I want to compare the look of that knob to something you will understand, America, but there is no way to say it any other way. When she was 7 months old, the elephant walked into a landmine. After that, some people wanted to kill her. How could she survive, doubled over and using her trunk as a crutch, leaning always in trees? Put her out of her misery, they say. But look where she landed instead, in this sanctuary, where every 3 months, as she continues to grow, some people redesign and gently, while she waits, warm, gray, and patient, secure around her blasted knob, a new and sturdy leg. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For our last poet of the evening, we have Sean McLean Brown, a disabled Marine Corps veteran. He taught writing at the Anza College and Western Connecticut State University. His poetry and fiction has appeared in more than 50 journals, including San Francisco Magazine, San Francisco Chronicle, amongst a few others. His work is also featured in 2 anthologies, 100 Best American Prose Poems Anthology and Veterans of War, Veterans of Peace. His writing is heavily influenced by his experience in combat and living with the consequences of war. Please welcome Sean McLean Brown. Thank you.
Sometimes it can feel like we're surrounded by a lot of tragedy. And sometimes we all know that's just one dimension, right? We know there's a lot of beauty, moments of beauty that we can share with each other. Throughout our day, we might have these small moments. I say that because sometimes listening to this work can be challenging, can feel sometimes like it's an assault. And it is, but that's one dimension. Much like the poem that was read of the ginkgo trees recovering. There is a lot of resilience and beauty to be had in the work that's in this anthology. And it's an honor to be among such great writers that are writing about such powerful, transformative things. But I urge you to, 1, definitely buy the book, but 2, when you read it, be aware that you're going to experience that. You're going to experience that dimension of feeling like it's too much. Don't turn away. Do a second reading, because you will encounter the beauty that is in here, the beauty of nature's resilience and its profound impact that it can have on our lives when we realize how connected we are to everything and each other. When Teresa was reading her piece, we were connected in a way, in a generational way that I was not even aware of because I wasn't born yet. I'm a third generation Marine. My grandfather and father served. My grandfather in World War II and my father in the Vietnam War. He flew F-4s and dropped Agent Orange and Agent Blue. So Teresa and I share this generational trauma that is passed down to us, but from different perspectives. But we're both sitting here today, and we have this connection. I never met Teresa before tonight. We just had email correspondence. But as strangers, I say this because as strangers together here in this room, we could sit down individually and find that common thread that we have. And so I urge you, when you do read this, or when you encounter that tragedy, or it feels like it can be too much for you in your own life, remember that there is those moments of beauty that are going to, I hope, save us, because there is a lot of hope in this. Our publisher couldn't be with us tonight. Lucille Langday is the publisher, and she is the publisher of Scarlett Tanager books. And so I want to start by reading her piece that's in here. I will read just a little bit of the author's note to give you some context for the piece. For more than 400 years, Europeans conducted a war of colonization against the indigenous peoples of North and South America. This war began with Christopher Columbus' arrival in the Bahamas in October 1492 and ended with a battle in Bear Valley, Arizona, between the U.S. Army and the Yaqui tribe on January 9th, 1918. In California, the War of Colonization was especially brutal. In 1851, Peter Burnett, California's first elected governor, declared that a war of extermination will continue to be waged between the races until the Indian race becomes extinct. For the inevitable destiny of the race is beyond the power and wisdom of man to avert, thus ushering in a period of genocide against California tribes that continued until 1873. Some might argue much longer than that. Congress never ratified any of the treaties with California tribes, and by 1900, the indigenous population of California had been reduced by about 90%. At the same time, the California tribes were being decimated, so too were many of the ecosystems. Winter Salmon Run juxtaposes settler activities with traditional indigenous life in California. Winter Salmon Run. 1. Cohos spawn where willows shade the creek. Females swish their tails to build a nest. They wait for horny males whose final quest brings them to these damsels, silvery, sleek, who show their bellies red as apples when they sweep their tails, wearing them to white, to make their mounds of gravel and invite males to come up close beside them. Then drop the pearly eggs beneath their fins to incubate all winter in the red, under trees whose leaves have all been shed. In spring, they'll hatch, become alevins, and head downstream someday to find the sea, where fishing nets run deep, but krill is free. 2. 3 years in the sea are quite enough before it's time to come back to the stream, where they are born and grizzlies used to dream, while pomos, miwoks, and uroks lined the bluff with nets to dip in the salmon run. the fish like stepping stones from shore to shore. But settlers took the land and fish and more, building dams and killing with their guns. No grizzlies fish today along the coast, where redwoods reach into the foggy sky, and salmon used to come to mate and die by millions. I can see the salmon ghosts in pools and riffles where the uroks drum. Take out the dams now, let the salmon come. And of course, I'm not sure if many of you were aware, in 2024, they won the legislation to remove that dam up in Klamath and allow the salmon to return to their historical spawning grounds. So that was in 2024. So there's another instance of hope that we can affect some change and reverse some of the damage that we've had. Another poet and novelist who appears in this anthology, his name is James Janko, and I've had the privilege to know him and call him friend. We were both members of Maxine Hong Kingston's Veterans Writing Group, which used to meet, still meets, once every season up in Sebastopol in Marin County. And the group quite literally saved my life in more ways than one, and allowed me to begin using writing as a very therapeutic way to understand my own PTSD, understand my own culpability in being part of the machine of war and what I did when I served in the Marine Corps. James Janko is, as I said, a novelist and poet. He was a medic in Vietnam, was a conscientious objector, so he refused to carry a weapon, but he attended to U.S. servicemen who were injured. And a lot of his writing largely figures into his experiences in the Vietnam War. His piece is titled "Late Night Scribble in Margins of Unpaid Bill." One day in Cu Chi, knee-deep in patty mush, booby trap, white flash, shards of leg, medic tying tourniquet, and hours later, revenge, bombs and napalm, fields and huts ablaze. No rice grass anymore, no coconut palms, no jackfruit or tamarind, no dragon fruit trees. This is the moon. GIs on patrol days later leave Coca-Cola in dying village, show goodwill. Win hearts and minds of ghosts. Recipe for war, same. During my time here, light the earth, shake and bake. There is a saying in Southeast Asia: ants suffer when elephants rage. His author's note: I was drafted into the Vietnam War in 1970, the year I was born, while serving as a combat medic in an infantry battalion commanded by, literally, Colonel George Armstrong Custer III, a direct relative of the poem that you read about Custard. I refused to carry a weapon. My unit operated in areas where resistant forces often disappeared into tunnels, and if we couldn't find our so-called enemy, our commanders called in the Air Force and, of course, Marines to destroy all that might be concealing or sustaining them. Planes bombed rice paddies, forests, fields, rivers, and villages, and they defoliated huge tracts of lands with Agent Orange and Agent Blue. I soon realized we were fighting the earth, the entire Vietnamese landscape. If we couldn't find our enemy, we could, and we did, destroy their land. Late Night Scribble in Margins of Unpaid Bill describes a basic military strategy: defeat the opposition by defeating the earth. Things have a way of repeating themselves. And then my experience in the Persian Gulf. I will read you the contextual note so you get a bit of understanding from it. During the Gulf War, the U.S. and its allies dropped 88,500 tons of bombs. The skies were thick with coalition aircraft, oil well fires, and the sounds of thunderous explosions. There were weeks when we didn't see the sun, didn't know it was even there. This poem arose when I recalled hearing about snow falling in the mountains in the northern region of Saudi Arabia on the skirmish border between Kuwait and Iraq, was where our forward air base was operating out of. I imagined our aircraft, Marine Corps AV-8B Harriers, in formation, readying for a bombing run on Iraqi artillery positions. And for those of you who know anything about the Persian Gulf, horse culture is big in Saudi Arabia, but in the whole Persian Empire region. And so I imagined the loss that must have happened with the flora and fauna and the animals with these bombing campaigns that we just assaulted the earth with. And this piece is called First Snow. War has a shadow that lingers like weather, like today, the cold, crowded peaks and ferocious grasses and confusion, a profusion of frost and flowers searching, their hearts fibrillating like a sparrow in a cat's maw, and the earth, skin like granite, flecked by knots of new growth, stubborn, twisted grasses who whisper wicked, sinful things to the wind, under cataract clouds, carrying slender pearl flakes with wings. The old alfalfa stalks ripple tensely. They can hardly contain their sorrow. Our bombardments have come. There is no loneliness as joyful as an open field of alfalfa below mountains and heavy clouds before destruction. The beautiful uncut hair of graves of those creatures great and small, whose names no one will ever remember. Now, gray concrete and electric light skate hand in hand, where in the distance in a dim barn, a father and his son hurry the horses into their stalls before we begin our bombing run. Snow drifts from the winter sky that's pale as milk. Our steel birds in perfect formation empty themselves in deafening resonance. Cluster bombs fall into the place that is open and smooths the rough edges until everything and everyone is blind and mute. This will be the last one that I read. And again, I'll give you some context for the piece. It's called Maps and Guns. There's a funny line that I borrowed from the author of, anybody familiar with the Jack Reacher series? Lee Childs, the author, right? There's a line in that Jack Reacher says about people who go into service. There are some people that join the service as a legal means to kill other people. Wow. Or kill things. And never a truer line has been written. But when they can't take it out on people, they'll take it out on the animals. And that's what this particular piece is about. So I did a temporary active duty with the military police, and so we were responsible for perimeter security around the base, outside and inside the wire. And this is about my experience working with some of those men. Maps and guns. Half the night up, face it. We begin this way. There are no women, no satellite TV, no Coca-Cola, not even the sun, hidden as it is behind billowing black smoke. There is only an X on this map, with an arrow pointing north to a line of scrimmage. This is simply a departure, demarcation of any sign of hope. Caramel apples, wet grass, cotton candy, watermelons. We are year-worn, indrawn, and compact. We are small, broken toys with maps and guns. To the north, there is the whine of distant jets and heavy bombardments. We must find a way between them. It wasn't the pockmarked earth. It wasn't the appendages disembodied and torn like dolls. It wasn't our unbearable thirst. It wasn't cresting the ridge on night patrol. It wasn't movement in the brush. A desert fox pulling her young, their limp, lifeless bodies shot as target practice. It wasn't any of that. The last thing I remember was the clear yellow eyes of the mother as she looked at me. I really struggled reading that piece without actually crying. You know, I felt culpable for being a witness to so much carelessness when it came to the lives of the animals and the environment. And the stare of the mother's fox was indictment enough for my inability to uphold a Marine's core unspoken, unwritten tenet is to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And so I live with that culpability, but I think this is part of that penance right here, standing here today with you and writing this and having it in this incredible anthology. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Sean, and thank you to all our featured poets. Let's give them a round of applause once again. Thank you. Yeah, we have copies of Convergence for sale, as well as many of the books that the authors have written. So we'll have a book signing, a reception in the lobby. Yeah, thank you so much for being with us this Friday evening. Appreciate you all for being here. Thank you.